coffee up your butt. Like, what do they call that?
Coffee enemas.
Coffee enemas.
How much are you spending on these things, and are they even having an effect? Whereas like creatine monohydrate, you can probably spend $10-15 for like a 3-month supply.
Get up an hour early. Just an hour earlier from what you're used to. I think the important thing there is that it's realistic. And who's the enemy? The enemy is distractions, right? The enemy is what's holding you back from reaching your potential.
The unfortunate part with nutrition is I think that there's a lot of just bad information out there that put what you need to do to see results on this crazy pedestal that makes it intimidating for people to want to do.
What are you grateful for? So there's probably something in your life that you're grateful for. And maybe leaning on that could be the thing that kind of gets you out of the funk that then creates this next habit, this next habit, this next habit. And that's why I think these 8 habits are really good, like holistically.
Trying to convince Jason to take creatine.
All right, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Gabe Yanez and I, we are on for an episode. We are going to talk about Def Reset. We're going to talk about creatine. And just before we got recording, we're in person, and Gabe's like, dude, did you jump on that creatine? Or no, what were we talking about before that? Blue blocker glasses.
Yeah, you were giving me a hard time because this was giving a weird reflection. But I try and wear these in the PM.
Dude, so I was with the guy the other day, and we were just talking about like the biohacking that's like kind of crazy. Over the years, Ben Greenfield was probably the one that was the most kind of like, not extreme. I don't know if that's the right term, but
he's pretty extreme.
He was pretty extreme.
Yeah.
I remember
he puts coffee up his butt.
So, okay. Speaking of coffee up your butt. So I don't know if I ever told you. So I'm at an MMT. It was like a master, like meetup. And we were in Utah or something. So Ben Greenfield's there with his family, and he puts on like a seminar. And it was the first time I'd ever been introduced to anal, like coffee up your butt. Like, what do they call that?
Coffee enemas.
Coffee enemas. And dude, if you're listening to this, you're probably like, what are you talking about? So
it's a thing.
It's a thing. So
yeah.
I'll never forget though. So he's talking to us about these coffee enemas. And the first thing he says is like, hey man, make sure the coffee's not hot.
Cold brew only.
And I'm thinking to myself, who the hell is going to pour hot steaming coffee down their ass? But so he would explain. So I guess what they do is like, dude, he like goes upside down up against the wall and then pours it in that way. Have you ever experienced this? I've never done it.
No.
I'm gonna grab my hat. Keep talking. Yeah.
No, I've tried a lot of biohacking things, but I draw the line at coffee enemas. I don't. Dude, I've seen they have products for it now that are like specifically designed. It's like a little IV bag. It was funny. I saw a sponsored ad the other day, and it just has the lady like laying down. But yeah, coffee enema is a real thing, man. They say it's great for your GI tract and gut health. But yeah, that's a little weird.
Wait, so it's an IV bag. So what do?
It looks like an IV bag because that's how you can hang it, and then it has a tube that I presume goes up your butt, and then you get the coffee enema.
Oh man. So much to learn about the biohacking space.
The thing with a lot of that stuff is that you can find a study that shows anything about anything, right?
Yeah.
So, and the thing with a lot of these things, whether it's, red light therapy or even cold plunge sauna, whatever, it's easy for someone to go out there, film a video, and they'll screenshot or show a study that shows something.
Right.
And even when they do that, like no one is going back and actually reading the study. You're just seeing the video, and someone pulled up a screen share of a study with like highlighted the single line that says that it has some benefit, and you believe it. But what ends up being the case with a lot of these things, it's
nuanced.
It's one study that found like one thing, but then there's been like potentially 20 studies that have found no effect, but obviously they don't mention that. And usually it's people that then have some product to sell you or some course to sell you about the thing.
Yeah. So this guy I was with the other day, he's like really into like biohacking. And what he said to me, and like, I kind of prescribed this. He's like, bro, if it was around 1,000 years ago, I'm down with it. If it wasn't down 1,000 years ago, I'm not down with it. And so we started getting deep in, like, I don't know about the coffee enemas. That's probably not the best example, but we started getting, he started talking to me about your like circadian rhythm, like the sun up, sundown, like grounding yourself in the earth. So he's saying like first thing in the morning, you go outside, you're not wearing any shoes. You're like, I guess like you're negatively charging your body and you're getting exposure to sun. And and then at night getting on some blue blockers and his benefits. And he's like, dude, that's where you really start to like nerd out. And then take it a step further. He's like, you could then go get studies done about your genetic breakdown and about where you come from. Because if you are darker skin versus lighter skin, how much vitamin D, how much sun exposure you need, and then what your body's supposed to be doing. And then he even went into another layer. He was like, and then not to mention talk about foods. He's like, dude, should you be able to eat an apple all year round? Or should you, or maybe like a peach?
Yeah, if it's not seasonal, if it's not local to where you're at.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff for me too is also like, it might have a benefit, but like how much effort and stress are you going to like make what's the, 95% optimal decision versus 94%, but is it worth it now, either trying to find the right thing that's in season or spending more money at the farmer's market for whatever, versus like, most people just need to eat more fruits and vegetables, right?
Yeah,
most people, like, the starting point is so low. And that's actually one of the things we want to talk about with the depth reset, that people just need to work on like the very, very basic habits, and not get all wound up in these things. But anyway, the blue light blockers, what I try and do, because the circadian rhythm thing, dude, is a real thing. And sleep is potentially the most important thing you can do for whatever goal. You want to put on muscle, you want to improve performance, you want to increase your testosterone levels. Like, it all starts with getting good sleep.
Yep.
So what I try and do is I avoid wearing my sunglasses early in the day. Like, if I am outside, like I'm trying to get sunlight, and then I'll put on blue light blockers, especially if I'm all day in front of the screen, but I'll try and put them on if I'm like working, it's like 2:55 now. So like around this time, I like to try and start wearing them. I definitely try and wear them if like, the TV is on later or I'm on my phone later. And I have found personally that it's a little bit better for my sleep. And I especially try and do it now that I'm traveling, because sleep is never ideal when you're in a different space. The kids are in a different space, so their routine's all messed up. So anything that I can do to help myself, and especially something that's so easy.
It's so easy.
Throwing
so
on
why aren't they the guy I was talking to? I've had those ones before, which they don't look bad. But then how about like those the red ones?
Yeah, I don't know. I just bought like the cheapest ones on Amazon that had good reviews, and that's what I use. But anyway,
Dave Asprey, dude, the first time I met that guy, he had like, I don't even know what color they were, but like they were like they were like so bright, like so red or blue or whatever they were. But
yeah. And there's levels to all this stuff, man. But creatine, you should take creatine.
Okay, creatine. I have creatine downstairs from our friends over at Jocko Fuel, and I just for you, I'm gonna go take some right after we're done podcasting.
But the big thing is you have to be consistent with it.
Okay, so I can't just do it today.
No, you have to be consistent with it. It was recently top of mind for me too, because I was listening to Derek from More Plates, More Dates on Rogan, and those guys go deep into it. But it's just like, it's the most wildly studied. Like, there are just so much research out there. And for a long time, the benefits were just like, hey, I'm going to put on some muscle, I'm going to put on strength, like do it. But now there's a lot of really interesting research on the cognitive benefits of it. And it's just one of those things where it's no side effects, like completely safe and super, super inexpensive. Like, I think where supplements, especially, people are just spending resources on things they shouldn't, is how much are you spending on these things, and are they even having an effect? Whereas like creatine monohydrate, you can probably spend $10-15 for like a 3-month supply. But the tough thing is that like you have to take it very consistently for it to work. And that's something that, people aren't great at. So.
All right. Creatine. We are here to talk about the Depth Reset. Now, the Depth Reset, Discipline Equals Freedom, is in conjunction with our friends over, Jocko and Jocko Fuel, Echelon Front, and the entire team over there. We did this last year, the Depth Reset, and it was incredible. And this year, we're hoping for over 100,000 people to participate in this. And the goal is really to start the year off. Gabe and I, we talk a lot about, not trying to like do this like new year, new you, me, whatever. But I do believe that there's a way that you could like kind of say, hey, January 1st comes around, I want to try and start instilling some additional principles. And so Train Hard is partnered to provide the workouts, and then the Jocko team provides a bunch of other lessons. So let's dive right into it. I mean, I see you pulled it up right there. I mean, there's a Depth Reset app. They take all the guesswork out of it.
Yeah. And I think that like a big thing I don't want to do is just make this, because I know people love the podcast, listen to podcasts. This isn't meant to be just like a, hey, go sign up for the Depth Reset for the rest of the episode. I think that there's, first of all, it's free. You should absolutely do it. and it's going to help. But I wanted to have a good conversation around like the habits that we talk about, because I think that it's something that we can all relate to, and they're obviously valuable, not just at the beginning of the year, but I look at a lot of these and they're a big valuable part of like what has allowed me to be successful, what has allowed me to like really lean into being the best dad and father that I can be. All the things that we talk about, I do think stem from these habits. So I think it's worth having a conversation from that respect.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you, man. Like January 1st at the end of the day is just an arbitrary date on the calendar. It is. Having said that, I think that there's a lot of value in using that date on the calendar as a moment of like, hey, this turns the page on the calendar year. It does.
It does.
What did I do last year? What did I do well? What didn't I do? And like kind of clean slate is a nice moment to say, hey, I wasn't really great in these areas of my life and I want to be better. So I'm going to start with that now and really use it as an opportunity to like kick yourself in the butt a little bit and start with like your best foot forward.
And well, and here's the thing, right? We talk about like the new year, new me, blah, blah, blah. But one of the things I was thinking about the other day is that I have been groomed, and everybody I think listening to this has been groomed since you were very young into looking at the New Year's as like a celebration that night, right? And saying, Happy New Year, right? I wish you prosperity in 2020. I wish you this. I culturally, right? Whether it's Chinese New Year, there's Persian New Year, like it always represents kind of like this fresh start for the next year. And to me, it's like culturally ingrained, regardless of the culture you come from, that like that's your opportunity. And so that's what we're talking about today. It's like, you know what I'm saying? Like I was thinking about that the other day for my kids. Like my kids have grown up in a way where like, dude, we celebrate New Year's and we say, hey, like guys, like what have you guys done well this year? Like, what are you guys proud of this year? Like what have my kids are old enough to share with me, like what are you proud of that you've done this year? And what's something you want to focus on in 2025 that you think is going to bring you a lot of fulfillment? And like, why is it that moment that Ash and I talk to the kids about it? I think it's just because that's like when it's like socially like the time, you know?
Yeah. And it's great that there's an opportunity that prompts you to do it.
That prompts you to do that. Yeah.
Like, sure, you can do that June 15th and it would be just as valuable. But there's something to be said about, hey, this is the time every 365 days that we do that and do that as a family and have that conversation. I think that there's so much value to that, like any other tradition, right? Also, what things are you grateful for that year?
Yeah.
It's just such a nice moment to reflect and set your goals for what the next year is going to be. But let's talk about these habits. So the whole challenge focuses around these 8 habits. First one, up before the enemy.
So let's talk about up for the enemy. The first weekly challenge, actually, I filmed it with the guys, and it was get up an hour early. And the reason why I think this is interesting is that let's just say you wake up at 5, right? Just an hour earlier from what you're used to. I think the important thing there is that it's realistic. So like if someone says, hey, they currently wake up at 8 a.m. and you're going to tell them to get up before the enemy, and that means to get up at 4:43 or 5 a.m. like Jocko, right? It just might be too much, unsustainable. But if you show someone how to wake up 1 hour early and they can see how much more they can get done, that's the challenge of week 1. That's what I'm excited about. So that's what up before the enemy, right? Like, and who's the enemy? The enemy is distractions, right? The enemy is what's holding you back from reaching your potential. It's not, obviously you can look at that in terms of combat, but that's not the way, we're talking about it here.
Yeah, it's being up an hour before the version of yourself if you hadn't done it, right? Like if I think about it, the version of myself, if I do wake up that hour early and that allows me to get my run in, to have some time alone before, the kids even wake up and I have to, go into dad mode, potentially, deal with a cranky kid or it's no longer in my control. The fact that I got that win, and this applies to some of the other habits, and I've now worked on my fitness. I've worked towards my goal of running this marathon and hitting a specific time. The fact that I did those things because I woke up an hour earlier, like that is me waking up before the enemy, because the enemy is the version of me that would have chosen the immediate comfort of that extra hour of sleep and now is stressed that they need to do the run later. That is like just from the get-go reactive to what does Shay need? What does Charlie need? Who's crying? Like what's going on? Instead of like, hey, I checked off a couple boxes and had my own time and now I can show up better. That at least to me is how I think about get up before the enemy, because at the end of the day, you're who you're competing against. I'm not trying to wake up an hour earlier than you
Right.
or someone else or someone else. Like
Right.
that to me doesn't matter. Everyone has different circumstances, different, work schedules, whatever. I'm just trying to do better than the version that would have picked the immediate comfort of, man, it's really nice under these covers right now, and I would love to stay in for
It's like
another
when
hour.
Gabe did the cold plunge for like whatever. Dude, that was ballsy. But dude, to up before the enemy, I think is a really important one of the def reset. And I think to your point, man, it's just, I know for me, every day in our house, I'm the first one up every day. And so it's just time where like, and I've told you this, but like for me, it's been a lot of like either audiobooks or the Bible for me. And so like, that's really well suited time to like just put your mind in the best state of mind to then crush the rest of your day. So up before the enemy, number one.
Get after it.
Oh, I mean, get after it's number two. And I think if you're listening to this podcast, it's probably pretty self-explanatory what get after it means. But basically, you got to do some type of workout. Excuse me.
And that's like, you have what you do when you wake up earlier. For me, going out and getting that run in.
Are you still going to run as much as you're running after your marathon?
Definitely not as much, but I'm definitely going to keep running. It's been the reason it started, and I shared this on the podcast. The reason it started was just because, when Ariel was pregnant with Charlie, I did have this like anxiety about like, hey, what's going to change with two? And I had this like nervous energy that I just like, I wasn't sleeping well anyway. And I was waking up early, and instead of waking up and like staring at my phone or my alarm, waiting for it to be the time that I had to get up, just went outside, man. And it ended up being this like really, really good experience for me of like releasing that energy a little bit. I got better sleep when I started doing it. But also it's just like where I run and where we live. And it's just like, you see all the stars, and it's like, there's no one out there. There isn't a street lamp. It's like a very like peaceful, like in many ways, it's like a meditation for me of sorts, even though I do like, listen to podcasts and I do whatever, but it's just like the peace of being outdoors, doing that, because it's not even like I'm going into a gym and working out. Like I'm just alone it's tough to explain, but that's been really positive. And even if I wasn't training for a specific running event, I wouldn't want to not have that.
Right. Okay. So get after it.
That's
number two.
Self-explanatory. Prioritize and execute. I like this one.
Yeah. I mean, well, they talk a lot about prioritize and execute from an echelon front. This is like a leadership skill where essentially, identify what your priorities are and then go out there and execute. And I think that the way that carries over into real life is like when it comes to your family, when it comes to your work, when it comes to pretty much family and work, like what is your priorities for that day and how can you go and execute and optimize that time? And I think that, writing down lists, identifying it, like one of the things I do is I email myself. It's probably not the best way to do it, but just like I email myself like what I want to get done like the next day or whatever. But that's also because I'm all over the place. I'm sure other people have way better ways of doing it, but prioritizing I think is key.
Do you think that, because again, like, you admit yourself that like, you always say you're all over the place and stuff. Is that an area of opportunity for you think that like requires some attention? And like, are you doing anything intentional as part of the depth reset? Because the whole thing is like, we're doing this.
Yeah.
Like we're all finding ways to do all 8 of these things for a month. And I think that one piece that I want to be better at on this podcast specifically, because I know that like it could be easy to listen to us or see what we post on social and make it seem like we have it all figured out. Like we don't. Like sure, working out isn't this thing that like takes a lot of energy for me. Like I enjoy it, but there are 100% areas that I know I can do better and that I want to do better. And I think that sharing that a little bit more is beneficial because sure, it's not tough for me to train every day. Like I genuinely enjoy it and I wouldn't miss it. But there are other things that I definitely want to be better about.
Yeah, I think the prioritize and execute can be a big focus for me, especially for the desk reset.
Have you thought about anything specific that like you didn't do before that you want to do now? Still kind of figuring it out. Like I would assume you've never.
No,
been like
what
a
I
big
want to do is
planner guy.
No, I haven't. What I want to do is just start. I really got inspired from Nick that we had on the podcast a while ago.
Yes.
About just structuring the days differently. And so like it's really my intention to like. I actually think it's going to bring me a lot of personal fulfillment and my family a lot of fulfillment. And I actually think it's going to be better for the business, but like literally structuring out my days. Like Monday, Tuesday, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to podcast on Wednesday, Thursday. Like, and just like, that's the structure, right? Like, moving forward, that's what I want starting in the new year.
Yeah. And if you guys haven't, definitely go back and listen to that episode with Nick, because he shares how impactful that's been for him.
I always butcher his last name. It's a longer Greek last name. And
you'll find it if you look up Nick. But the most impactful thing about why he shared that he does that, and it made so much sense to me, was the fact that like different things that we do requires very different energy and approaches, and having to shift from that energy to the other. The example that I gave when we had the conversation is, if I have a serious conversation with Ariel about something that we're potentially in disagreement about, and then after that, I'm trying to come in and have, a work meeting or a podcast, I'm still 40%.
It's hard
thinking about that conversation.
Yeah.
Because, I care about it a lot. It's emotional. It's a lot of things. So I think that obviously that might not be the best example, because sometimes those conversations, it's not like you can say, well, we're just going to do those on Monday.
Pre-plan those. Yeah.
Right. But I think it's a good example of how, if you mix these things of like stuff like podcasts and stuff like deep work, like writing copy, you don't want to necessarily have like 2 hours of podcasts, 2 hours of like, writing newsletters or programming workouts, and then back to 2 hours of podcasts. It would be better if you can stay in the same lane for the day, because you're just, hey, I'm in podcast mode today.
Yeah.
Like, we're chatting, we're riffing, we're talking about all these topics. I don't have to like pivot to this other thing, which always takes a little bit of energy, and you lose efficiency when you do that. So it made a lot of sense. Nick was saying that he structures his week to like, I'm doing all creative stuff, I'm doing all work meetings, and then like, have stuff for the family and have actual days allotted to that, versus just like, man, I have a hodgepodge of all of those things today and trying to figure it out.
Yeah. So I'm definitely 100% going to start utilizing the calendar more and start structuring out, in particular, content creation.
Speaking of calendars, the big ass calendar that I bought last year, dude, I just bought the new one, dude. I love that tool.
I gotta just get one. So right now we're filming. We're at my home, and we're at my house. And it's funny. I got a new Man in the Arena poster that's supposed to be coming, because this one's just so weak. But
it's pretty small.
It's pretty small. But yeah, the big ass calendar. That's a good example, right?
It's a good example, because many calendars you see a month at a time. The year snapshot with like the colorful stickers to put the things that excite you the most was just a really, what's really cool about it now is, now that I've had it for a full year, like going back and seeing all the things that I've done, all the trips that I've had, the races that I've trained for, other things that I put in there were like, stages of flex training, like, hey, this is a cut, this is a bulk, like all of that, just taking a back step and like seeing, wow, that's what I did in the year, was really cool. So it was a good organization tool to plan the year, but it's also been like a really nice, now that the year is over, to like see all of that stuff. So that's definitely something I recommend checking out. Hydrate or die.
I mean, this one's pretty straightforward.
But I think that the important part that I want to hammer here is that I know a lot of people struggle with nutrition, and a lot of what people want to start with a, best foot forward in the new year is their nutrition. There's a lot of, New Year's resolutions and going to lose a little bit of weight. Like, do all these things.
I'm going to be documenting some stuff.
Yeah. That's right. So stay tuned for that. The hydrate piece, people don't realize that if you're just not having enough water throughout the day, can solve so many of your problems.
Well, you feel like shit.
And also, like, many times you're going and reaching for a snack, reaching for whatever. And if you just down 16 ounces of water, that could potentially go away.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, I think when I feel my worst is when I'm the most dehydrated. Right. And so like, my muscles feel sore, my body feels more achy, my stomach doesn't like work as well. So yeah, hydrate or die.
Clean fuel.
Yeah, I mean, that's just eating better. And so we're going to be documenting some stuff coming into 2025. We had we don't need to give away, or should we give away the comment that came through, or what?
Yeah, that's fine.
There was a YouTube comment that came through, and it was just looking a little flabby to me. And I'm like, oh, this guy. And so I'm taking it seriously, and you're going to see me get a little bit leaned out, even though I don't know, most people would say I'm okay, but that's my goal, is I'm going to eat clean And that's really the only thing I'm going to change. That's honestly, I'm not going to really change anything about my workouts or anything like that. I'm just going to eat a little bit different. And I think you'll see I think we'll be able to storytell really well around it. Like, hey, here's your body fat. Here's your aesthetic look. Here's what I changed, and look at how it could change. Because I think that guys can get quicker results than I think they realize.
Yeah.
Depending on the guy and a variety of things. But yes, in general, I think that's true.
If you're training, right? Like if you're moving, if you're, ideally following one of our programs, because I think that they cut out the BS and they're incredibly efficient, you don't have to change everything. You don't have to I'm never going to eat X again to see the results that you want to see. And I think that the unfortunate part with nutrition is I think that there's a lot of just bad information out there that put what you need to do to see results on this crazy pedestal that makes it intimidating for people to want to do.
Yep.
So yeah, what I hope in sharing some of this stuff is that people realize that I can still do this, do that. I just need to kind of make changes, around the edges and be consistent, which is the most important thing. Because what a lot of people do is they're super strict, whether it's, during the week and then on weekends, it all goes out the window. Or in the daily example, they're super strict, like for the first 75% of the day.
Oh, and then at night,
then because you're quote unquote super strict, it just means you haven't eaten enough all day. You get home and man, that pantry starts looking awfully tempting.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you can't stop with the tortilla chips, the cookies, whatever. And you blow out everything that you've quote unquote done well the rest of the day, where you can fix that by just being more intentional with your water consumption, your breakfast, your lunch, making sure that you're getting protein and veggies and food that makes you feel good, energizes you throughout the day. So that by the end of the day, you're not starving.
Yeah.
Once
I
you get home.
had to have that talk with Caden yesterday.
Dude,
yeah.
100%, man. So that's clean fuel. No sugar-coated lies.
I don't.
So I don't know the.
I don't remember them. That's a newer one.
This is a lot of people. I know this to be true, especially in the nutrition space. Find the best example of this, dude, is you remember when Paleo X was the thing, paleo brownies, paleo muffins, paleo whatever, and just because it had paleo in front of it, you were it's got to be healthy. It's paleo.
It's like keto. Yeah.
It's very easy, especially in the world we live in now, where you can go down, the aisle at your favorite grocery store and see things that say high protein or organic or whatever. That is just it's a candy bar, or it's just
I get what you're saying. Still, that's what they're talking about here.
It's this stuff is still the food that you should be avoiding.
Yeah,
but it's put out there it's a health food, and it isn't. So I think that clean fuel, sugar coated lies, those are pretty similar to me in that just eat real food the majority of the time. Moderation is key, and you will see results.
The next one, back to the book, huh? So this is something I actually, for the Def Reset, what I'm most focused on is going to be prioritize and execute, and back to the book. Those are going to be my two. The food, the training, it's fine. It's all gonna work. So right now I got a book on my agenda called Mansfield's Book of Manly Men. That's one that I'm looking at, or I just started it on Audible. And then The Gift of Fear. Was this from Tony Blauer? I don't remember who recommended this.
I think so.
And then Awe, The New Science of Everyday Wonder and How It Could Transform Your Life. So I took screenshots of these, and I'm going to go through them on Audible because I've been just slacking, man. I have not been reading enough, and I need to get back to it.
Is that reading?
Oh, okay. Here we go.
I'm asking. I've been really bad about reading for the past.
It's reading
2-3 months, but is there a value in actually picking up a book and reading it? It's just a question. If there isn't, if you're getting the information, I can see that being what it is. But at the crux of what it is that you should be working on more, I think that there's a lot of value in actual reading.
like a paper. Okay,
for sure.
The only debate, I think the strong argument is there's something about touching a book. If you're traveling, you're on vacation. I like having a book, also for my eyes and stuff. I prefer it versus a Kindle. But if listening to an audiobook like in the sauna or on a run is going to help me get through it, like I'd rather do that. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
Like because I've tried to sit down and read books, and unless I'm like on an airplane or on vacation, it's really hard for me to do that. But if I'm like riding a bike out on a run, doing something, I'm listening to an Audible book.
You can definitely read a book in the sauna, by the way.
Oh yeah, I've read a book in the sauna. The pages just get fucking terribly wet, but yeah, I think it's still reading, dude. I don't know. That's a good. Is listening to a book on Audible still reading a book? I say yes.
I forget where I heard this, but I know that a lot of the benefits from reading is like making you a better writer, making you just be able to like comprehend that stuff better. All skills that, at least for me and what I do, are incredibly important. And again, I've been really bad about reading, man. I have been listening to podcasts exclusively on my runs. And I would say that that's the closest thing. I don't even listen to audiobooks.
Yeah. So it sounds like you and I are both on the same page then, based on this list.
No, it's a big thing that I want to focus on in January, is getting back to picking up a book, because I used to read at least a couple pages every single night.
Yeah.
But now, and again, you know, one of the things that we preach all the time is not using your kids as an excuse for not doing the thing. But it's just, you know, when I go to bed, Charlie and Ariel are in bed, because right now our 7-month-old sleeps in bed with us. And Ariel doesn't like, because it wakes up the baby, for me to turn on my reading light that I used to. So that's why I've stopped. But that's not a good reason to not find other times in the day where I can pick up that habit back up, at least for the Deaf Challenge, because it's one of the 8 habits and we walk the walk, and just see what that does. Maybe it's something where I'm like, don't need to do it. But the interesting thing about a lot of these things, man, is you come up with all the reasons why not to do it. And then what I like about signing up for the accountability of doing something like this is like, now I'm going to find, okay, so I can't read at night because my wife doesn't want my reading light on. Great. I can do it in the morning. I can definitely find 10 minutes either after my run,
or you can switch out a podcast for an Audible.
And potentially at the end of the 30 days, I'll be like, hey, that was a great thing for me to do. Like, I got X out of it, and I wouldn't have known that had I not done it.
Yeah. I mean, dude, think about it for you. If you're out on a run for an hour a morning or whatever it is, I mean, dude, you can get pretty far in an Audible book.
Yeah.
I mean, so if I'm singing the song, like normally I ride the C2 bike in the morning, I'm listening, like I said, I've been listening to the Bible, but if I switch that up for one of these books I'm just talking about, dude, we can nail those things. So,
all right. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to commit to finding some time in the day to at least get a couple pages of like an actual book, but I'm going to switch my podcast and my morning runs to Audible for the deaf reason.
Yeah, it's easy.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then the last one, remember.
Yeah, I think the inspiration, I think, for this was really for Jocko, and like remembering like people that he's lost. Like, because him, Leif, JP, a lot of those guys in Task Force Bruiser lost good men. And I think for them, remembering those men helped them to like be the best version of themselves. Like they want to live a fulfilling quality life, to honor like these men who left too early. I think that's what the original inspiration for that. But I think we could take it in our own ways, right? Like, because we don't have that same situation necessarily. But you could still look at like, how do you take remember?
For me, it's all about gratitude, which is something that I've been lately trying to be a lot better at with Shay. So I do bedtime with our son every single night, and he's 2. So like, he's not really understanding this stuff that we talk about, but every night we just talk about a couple things that we're grateful for. Like, hey, just grateful for the day, man. We get to go on a good trip, whatever. And what I'm trying to do is build the habit of that being just something that we talk about every night. So I've been trying to be better about it in that context. But what I've noticed is it's been powerful to just every night, like, think about whatever it is that you're grateful for. You're grateful for just the fact that, like, dude, you get another day on this earth, man. Like, and I know that some of that stuff, I don't know, maybe it'll sound cheesy to some people, whatever. But I think that I would have been the first one maybe a year ago to tell you that, like, is that really going to make a difference? But I'm telling you, man, from experience, it does. It does.
Yeah.
And now having kids, man, I have so much, so much to be grateful for every single day. and saying it out loud, just like it's the perfect way to end the day. And I appreciate doing it with him. But that to me is remember, is just like just being grateful, man.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's so many ways you could take remember, right? I think for me, when I look at it, it's like, yeah, having gratitude from where you're at, looking in your past and being like, dude, like we've been through so much worse. Like we should be so grateful for where we're at. Like I know for us, like, dude, my family's, we've had some adversity and it's like just, there's just a ton of gratitude there, right? You're remembering what you went through and how it made you stronger. And like, but being present in that, I think is the hard part of this, right? So during the challenge, maybe that's something that you're struggling with is like, hey, dude, like I find myself in a deep state of depression on a regular basis. Okay, well, let's remember, like, what are you grateful for? Because there's probably something in your life that you're grateful for, and maybe leaning on that could be the thing that kind of gets you out of the funk. That then creates this next habit, this next habit, this next habit. And that's why I think these 8 habits are really good, like holistically, right? Because you got the books to help like constant learning. That's what I'm thinking about when I think about that. You have, Get After It, which I just think stems everything else. Getting Up Before the Enemy, like each one of these has their own like facets, right? And picking which one you have a hole in, I think will only help all of them help you succeed more. So yeah, dude, for me, it's prioritize and execute and the books. Those are the two that I'm gonna be more present on, because the reason why the books are important is that, and this is something I want to get better about on the podcast. The podcast is a great form of entertainment, engagement, oftentimes information for people. But I think a book just like layers it a little bit differently. And so if I could listen to the book, gain some knowledge, some perspective, and then be able to bring that onto the podcast or be able to bring that in my life, that's the goal of a book for me.
For sure, man. The more it's kind of like the more you make, the more you can give. It's similar, and the more knowledge you can absorb, the more inspiration you can get, the more you can put that out there for people.
Yep.
I appreciate a book recommendation from someone like more than anything else.
Yeah.
I love when we get book recommendations from podcast guests. And if anyone, we've gotten a few from emails from podcast listeners, and I appreciate those as well. The one thing, whether, you're doing this through prayer or meditation, I think they're both very similar. The value, and I remember Miranda bringing this up when we had her on the podcast, another awesome guest. People should go back and listen to that. The value of saying these things out loud.
Oh yeah.
Is, I've realized since starting to do it, is so powerful. Cause you can say like,
dude, it's so powerful.
Right? I'm grateful for X, Y, and you're thinking it. But the fact that I do this with Shay, and again, like, dude, he's not going to remember any of this. But it's almost like giving me like a reason to say it out loud, because I'm kind of like sharing with him that, hey, we're grateful for these things. And dude, I'm telling you, man, it's been a very impactful change in habit for me. That's now only been like a few months, but never going back. Like,
yeah.
It's an absolute end of day, like just talking about that stuff. And again, like I've mentioned this in the podcast before, like, and kind of like, my faith with my journey with faith, and like trying to figure out like, how I step into that a little more. Cause I do think that there's an area I can. So I think that, it is prayer for us. But whatever you want to call it, meditation, prayer, it's been a really powerful thing to share with him. And it's made a big difference in just how I feel at the end of the day, even on days that like are tough days, which, dude, you have 2 kids under 2, and some days are hard, man, but you realize how grateful you are for everything. And you're just like, it's like a weight off your back. You're like, dude, that was nothing. Like, I just have nothing but gratitude for all the things that I have, and like the little things that maybe 5 minutes ago I was like, today was such a hard day. Like, it just puts it in perspective.
Yeah, when you say it out loud, Sal DeStefano from Mind Pump, he also talked about like praying out loud. I don't know if, well,
I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's been really, really interesting, right? Like, grounding your feet barefoot, wake up in the morning, express your gratitude, say some prayer. Dude, I'm telling you, that, or at night, boom. But out loud, I think, is the key. I do think, and Miranda said it like that, and I didn't get it until I got it.
Makes a huge difference. Huge difference.
Your mic is back on now, huh? But dude, if you guys are listening to these 8 habits and you're like, all right, man, like I like those, make sure to check out the Def Reset. We're going to put that in the podcast show notes. like I said, the crew over at with Jocko and his entire crew, they are awesome people doing awesome things, really on a mission to impact lives. And I think, obviously us here at Train Hard, we're 100% aligned on that shared vision. We will be supporting on all the workouts, just free workouts that are going out to a bunch of people. But I'd encourage you to go sign up for it. It's completely free. You can download the app. And if nothing else, hopefully it'll just jumpstart your year in a better way, which is what Gabe and I are really interested in doing. And we will have our own things going on here at Train Hard. We will be having different cycles. We're going to be hitting our workouts, but this is going to be something that we could do as a group to hold us accountable, to do the things that we're not talking about just training wise, right? Like we talk a lot about training, but this is a good example of like reading books. We never really talk about that on the podcast. So we got to start doing it. I think we should make like now that I'm thinking about it, I should make like a 2025 commitment of like one book a month or something like that. I got to think through like what that would be, but like how long the average Audible book is and commit to something like that.
Train Hard Book Club.
Train Hard Book Club. Dude, I think we should have a Train Hard Book Club. Could you imagine if we have like a monthly meeting where we go over the book and like lessons we learned from it?
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. All right, everybody. Well, hey, make sure you go check out the Def Reset. Appreciate all of you guys for checking out the podcast. Go back, check out all the other incredible episodes with guest episodes with Gabe and I, with the entire crew. And we just really, really appreciate all of you for listening. Keep training hard, keep getting after it, and make sure to share this podcast with a friend that you believe not only wants to train hard, but also get on the path. And Def Reset is a great way to jumpstart the year. Let's go.
Let's go.